Welcome back to the Racing Writers Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Kelly Crandall. My guest this week is Erik Jones, the driver of the number 20 Toyota at Joe Gibbs Racing. Erik and I spent about 24 minutes last month at Joe Gibbs Racing while he was preparing to get in the number 20 and going over some things, getting a few details, everything finalized before his move in-house to Joe Gibbs Racing. Erik won the 2017 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rookie of the Year driving for Furniture Row Racing, but as I'm sure everyone is aware, he is going back into the organization that he has had ties to for the last couple years. So I appreciate the folks at Joe Gibbs Racing who let me come over in December, the off-season, while normally everyone is either on vacation or getting away from business and interviews and things like that. But the good folks at JGR let me come over and talk to Erik early last month. So you will hear us make reference to December and the Snowball Derby. We actually recorded this a few days after the Snowball Derby, so the conversation between Erik and myself is going to start with an interesting little conversation about late model racing, the Snowball Derby, maybe the disconnect between drivers running short tracks and late models and crossing the bridge or closing the gap between fans of short tracks and NASCAR. That's where we start the conversation. I was actually quite impressed with Erik's view on things like that, his view on what drivers need to do or why he enjoys, what's the appeal of running late models. So that is where the conversation starts. Of course, Erik is going to take us back through his rookie year, some of the things he felt he did right, things that went against the number 77 team as they tried to win a race and make the playoffs. If you go back and look at Erik's stats, you'll see that he actually started the 2017 season quite well in the sense that he was competitive and he was very fast, like his then teammate Martin Truex Jr., but the number 77 team had quite a few things go wrong. He would get caught up in accidents, they would make mistakes, and it really robbed them of good finishes, which hurt their progress and hurt their hopes to make the playoffs. So during the summer months, which Erik points to as being the strongest part of their season, by then it came down to the fact that they needed to win a race to get into the playoffs. So many things that Erik digs into, the competition level in the Monster Energy series is something that I don't think gets enough attention, certainly when it comes to drivers like Erik or maybe a Ty Dillon, a Chase Elliott, who come into the series who have tasted success in other series, but they come in and maybe they don't really kind of get off to the start that everyone expects. And you're going to hear Erik talk about how that's not against anybody's talent level. This is the hardest series and the hardest racing in the world. It's so competitive that when you go up there, you have to be almost perfect to win races. And you'll hear Erik talk about adjusting to why he thought maybe at first it was going to be easy. But then when you really get into it, when you're really in the Monster Energy series full time and you're going against guys like Jimmie Johnson and Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, talented teams, talented drivers, it's not easy. It's competitive. And I was really struck by how honest Erik Jones was in breaking down, what it takes to be a driver at this level. So many things that Erik and I got into, taking care of some housekeeping notes here before we get into the show. Again, thank you for all the ratings and reviews and spreading the link for the podcast on social media. Now, don't be alarmed. This will probably be the last episode for a couple weeks. This is the last interview that I had in the can, so to speak, that I had ready to go to post when I felt like it. So I don't have any more interviews right now. We are a week away from the media tour here in Charlotte. We're going to get drivers next Tuesday and Wednesday at the NASCAR Hall of Fame and Convention Center. So all the websites, racer.com, everybody who covers this sport will be very busy. And we are closing in, I believe we're less than 35 days now from the Daytona 500. So this will be the last interview you're going to have on your feed for quite a while. But don't be alarmed, because once the season starts, once we get down to Daytona, I'm hoping I can kick things off very strong. I'm going to spend the next couple weeks going over my game plan, how I want to attack the podcast, who I want to have guests, things I want to talk about. So as the season goes on next year, hopefully I can get back into a routine of hopefully having one guest per week. So Erik is the last one right now, I guess, until we go on our little hiatus, and I think it's a strong one to end on. Again, about 24 minutes with Erik Jones, who has fast-tracked through the NASCAR ranks and really is going to be a contender for quite some time. So appreciate everybody's support, appreciate you listening. I really hope you enjoy this podcast. I think you'll find it interesting, and if you have any feedback, please send it my way. So here we go with Erik Jones on the Racing Writers Podcast. I hope you enjoy. All right, Erik Jones. I have to laugh because we're only 2 weeks removed from the season, and you're already here at Joe Gibbs Racing, I guess, doing some stuff for 18, right?
Yeah, not much time off, I guess, but no, I was fortunate. We got everything lined up this week, really, before the season starts, and after this week, I'm really pretty much free until mid-January. So it was nice to get it worked out like that. Last year was really hectic the way the schedule was, which wasn't really anyone's fault. It was just kind of between moving to Furniture Row and also having to do things for JGR and Xfinity. Just kind of got it scattered, and really throughout the whole offseason I was either going somewhere or flying somewhere, so it made it pretty busy. So nice to have it a little more worked out this year and the scheduling a little bit better.
Get it all taken care of.
Yeah.
So a couple days ago, we're recording this on December 6th. A couple days ago was a Snowball Derby. I saw your tweet about how it was difficult, I guess, to watch it. You weren't there. How much does that race mean to you, just to start off with? Obviously, you've won there before, but to not be there, to kind of just watch from afar, how, I guess, punches you in the gut a little bit? Yeah,
I mean, it's not much that. I really just enjoy running the race itself, and I wish I could go back and do it again. It's hard to honestly find the right situation to do it in, and with the right people and the right opportunity. You just have to have so many things prepared and in the right place to go down there and be competitive and have a shot to win the race, that I just don't feel the money it takes to go down to do it the right way. I don't feel like doing it, a way that I don't feel like I'm going to have a shot to win. So just haven't had that opportunity really in a few years. Maybe someday in the future I can go back and do it again, but it's just a fun race. I just enjoy watching it. The competition level that comes down there. I was looking at qualifying, and it was half second between first and the last guy that made the show. And if you take the pole winner out, it was even tighter than that. So it's just neat to see that. And really, late models, it's you're somewhat limited by the rule book, especially now, to where you can only do so much, and it really kind of comes down to what you can do as a driver on the racetrack at Pensacola, and what you can do as a crew chief on strategy and everything else. So it's just fun in that sense. I'm
curious to get your take on this, because it seems like every time a big late model race comes up, whether it's Winchester or the Snowball, that a lot of NASCAR fans or people in NASCAR want to talk about the fact that maybe that's something that NASCAR should look at, is there's a little bit of a disconnect between some of its stars going and running short track races and trying to gap the bridge there. Have you thought about that at all? Do you feel like it's important for you guys to do what you do, in the sense of go run short tracks when you can?
Well, I think there's just been changes over the years. I think if you look back at 30 years ago, all the, half the Cup field went and ran short track races, whether it was in ASA or late models, whatever it was at that time. And then with the last 15 years, there wasn't really many guys that did it. Cup guys, if they ran something else, it was Xfinity or trucks, and really didn't run a whole lot else. And then once Kyle came in and started kind of going back and racing late models more and more, I think it opened fans' eyes up to that there was racing outside of NASCAR, and that there was an opportunity to maybe be closer and have a different experience with NASCAR drivers. So you go to your local short track, anybody can buy a pit pass for $30 to get in. You can walk in the pits and meet your favorite driver. And, I think some people just kind of had forgotten. And once Kyle started racing that more and more, I think it opened people's eyes up to some of the big late model races that were out there. Mm-hmm. And then, with Chase and Ryan and myself coming through the super late model ranks, it makes people look back and say, well, how did they get there? And they see those big races and those opportunities. And people want to watch them now, because not only the chance to meet guys in a more personal sense at those races, but, kind of looking for the next star coming up through, the next guy that was going to have an opportunity. So I think that's the unique part of late model racing, and I think it's the same for dirt racing. You have fans in that realm of racing too, with Larson and Christopher Bell coming up. And so I think it's just been opened up a little more to people's eyes now here in the last few years.
Do you hope, even now that you are fully entrenched in the Cup Series, it makes you, or keeps you obviously a lot busier, but do you hope to still, as long as you want to be able to go run races wherever you can? You seem like somebody who enjoys the seat time and just to race, like Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, it's more for me. It's just a different kind of racing. It's Cup is very challenging, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and it's a long weekend, and it's just it's a lot of work. And we all have fun doing it, but it's a lot of work. And when you go late model racing, it's competitive, and it takes work, but it's a little bit more of a freewheel kind of experience. You show up to the track, and you only have an hour of practice, maybe at the most, and you go qualify and then you race. So, it's just a little bit more laid back, and there's just no pressure. For me, I don't have, when I show up to those races, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. I don't feel like I have to win the races. And when I go there, I just want to be competitive and have a shot to win it. And I enjoy racing against the guys that I used to get to race against every week. Guys that up in the Midwest, Brian Campbell, all those guys I raced with growing up. So just to get to go back and race some of those guys is a lot of fun for me.
So 2017, Rookie of the Year in the Cup Series, had some ups and downs. Have you had time to kind of digest everything and take anything away from the season yet, or is it still too fresh and you're still too busy?
No, I think I have. I think even as the season was going, I took time to really kind of digest it week by week. As fast as the weeks go by during the season, I still feel like I took time to do it. And within the last couple of weeks, I've had more time to look back at the season and the races and see what went right, see what went wrong. And, I think there was mistakes that I made throughout the year. There were mistakes we made as a group throughout the year. And if we look back and, there were so many races where we had things go wrong, where we were running top 10 all day and ended up running 13th or 14th. And races where, maybe we did sneak away with the top 10, but it seems like more than not we were running in the top 10 and top 5 and had those races fall out of our grip in the last 50 laps, which, was really frustrating and really what hurt our shots at pointing our way into the playoffs too. So, just eliminating the mistakes for next year is big for me. And, also the DNFs. We had, I think 7-8 DNFs throughout the year, which is way too many, especially, trying to be in the playoffs and be competitive in the playoffs. So, I think the midsummer, late summer stretch for us was one that I was really proud of. We had about 2 months where we consistently ran up front, led laps, and we were able to contend for some wins along the way. And that was a period I was really pretty proud of. And then we lost that a little bit for the last half of the season. The last month and a half, it seemed like things just kind of fell away and we weren't able to have that success anymore. So it was just a trying year, just building that new group, the 77 Cart Furniture Row. I feel like we did a good job with it, but it was a group of guys that really had never all worked together. But many of them had never worked in the Cup Series either. It was Chris Gale's first year as a crew chief in the Cup Series, along with obviously me being a rookie. So that made for some trials and tribulations throughout the year, but I think next year, with us both having a year under our belt, it'll be a lot smoother.
So a few things that you mentioned there I wanted to hit on. You talk about the summer months. The summer months, things really started to kind of trend upward, and you were in contention to either point your way into the playoffs, you needed a little bit of help, or you were getting closer to that win. With how the season started, where, you were so fast, but, things just would happen. Either you got caught up in wrecks or just, stuff happened. Mm-hmm. Was the summer really the point where you thought, hey, we have a shot at the playoffs? Or did you come into this year thinking that was a realistic goal?
Well, I came into the year thinking it was a realistic goal to make the playoffs and even to win a race. And, when we really hit those summer months and we made a few changes along the way, that was when I thought, man, I think we can really win a race. We weren't in a position to sneak a win and, kind of have an okay day and then sneak away with a win. We were at a point where we had to have a perfect weekend. We had to start out and have a really good car off the truck. We had to qualify really well and stay up front all day. But I thought there was a few races in there where it's like, man, we could do it today, and unfortunately, we just didn't work out. You have to have a really perfect day to grab wins in the Cup Series. You've seen it this year with Chase, how close he's come so many times and hasn't been able to close it out. And I think that just goes to show how on it you have to be to win these races. It's just tougher than ever. The competition's so tight. If you make one mistake and lose track position at any point in the day, it's tough to make that back up. But I look at Michigan, I look at Bristol, even Richmond, Phoenix early in the year. A few races where it's like we really had a car that could have done it. We just didn't quite, we weren't able to quite close it out.
Talk about Bristol. Was Bristol really like almost your coming out party in a sense of, hey, this is not only what this team can do, but you as a driver. Do you feel like that was maybe a defining race for you during the year?
Yeah, I think last year that was our best race for sure. Well, the funny part was it was our best race. It wasn't really our best weekend. We had a lot of issues in practice. We missed the whole final practice. We broke a steering pump and weren't even able to get on track. And I was, that was the one race. It was closing in on the playoffs, and I was like, this is, I really thought it was our shot to get a win and try to win our way in. At that point, we couldn't point our way in. And as the day was going, I thought, man, it's just not going to happen this weekend. And then we got the pole and then ran up, led over 300 laps. It was, as the day went, I'm like, we're closing in on it. But there was, that one guy that's pretty good at Bristol seems to always kind of figure it out towards the end of the day. So it was fun, though. It was a great race. It was fun to race with Kyle at the end. It was kind of, It was really a unique thing for me. It took me back to, 5 years ago. I mean, we were racing each other at the Snowball, and 5 years later we're racing each other for a cup win, and my first cup win. So I thought that was really special. I thought that was a neat day. I wish we obviously could have won. I still think about it a lot, and what could I have done different. But just a cool day, and definitely a day that boosted my confidence to say, we can do this. I mean, we can win races. We could have won that race. So just going into every race from then on out, I think I had a little bit different perspective.
I've been curious, Erik, because you haven't been the only one. I know you talked to Nate Ryan for his podcast, and one of the things that stood out there, as well as some of the younger guys that I've talked to, for instance, like a Ty Dillon, who was also a rookie this year, is you guys have all said the same thing. The adjustment to the Cup Series from the Xfinity Series was just something that you couldn't really prepare for, and it was really a big stepping stone type thing. I'm curious, what did you learn mostly about yourself this year in going through this long schedule, in racing the top guys in the series? Was there anything about yourself that stood out, maybe that you learned or you figured out about your racing style or anything to that effect?
Yeah, I think I look back at, there was just a lot of changes all at once. I look back at my career in NASCAR, and I was always in high downforce cars as long as I was in NASCAR, and really learned how to be successful in those in Xfinity last year, in the trucks early on. And honestly, it wasn't very hard. I mean, I had really good race cars. I showed up to JGR for Xfinity for my first full-time year, and we were going to Texas and all these mile and a halves, and we were out qualifying the field by 2/10. It was it was silly at that time. It's not like that anymore. We still have good stuff, but it's not quite that good.
Right.
So for that year, I was like, well, shoot, this is easy, and really didn't have to do much preparation. Gabe Hart would get on me every other week because he realized I wasn't reading my driver report and just showing up and driving. And it was fine. We were winning races, so it was like he'd get
Don't
mad.
Fix what's not broken.
Right, but he really couldn't say a whole lot because we were competitive and winning. And then you get to the Cup Series, and I looked back at what I did for the few Cup starts I did in 2015. I was like, well, when I did that, it was a lot like Xfinity. The cars drove similar. We were fast at the few races I did. So I thought, oh, this would be easy to be my own deal. They'll all be working for me, and I'll be able to do everything my way. And then I got there, and it's like, okay, well, the cars drive a lot different, number one. And, doing it every week, you just realize how competitive it is. When you get that small dose, I don't think you really get the whole experience of the Cup Series. And, I just really had to change my mentality. I think my work ethic changed, and I had to up that, and preparation changed, and just everything that I should have been doing in Xfinity and trucks and didn't do were things that I have to do in Cup to be competitive and be successful. And as I worked on those things and learned better how to study for races and how to prepare, I think our weekends got smoother, our races got better, and we were just, all around just more competitive. So just working on that and focusing on that, and tempering expectations, and working on more so taking what the car would give me. I mean, even in Xfinity, there was a lot of times where we got in crashes and made mistakes, but it wasn't as big of a deal because we were running well. So just tempering that and figuring out how to take if it's a 7th place day, take a 7th place day. Don't try to make it a 3rd place day. And just figuring that out, I think, was a big thing for me.
So it sounds like it's one of those things where when drivers who are lauded for their talent, like you or a Chase or a Kyle Larson or a Ty, whoever it is, when you move up to this series and you don't go out and set the world on fire, it's not because all of a sudden you guys lost your talent. It's a testament to this is the best series in NASCAR, and it just shows how tough it is.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you ask Chase and Kyle and Ryan the same question, I think they'd have, I don't know if they'd be as honest about it, but I think they'd have similar answers. Mm-hmm. So it's just a lot different. I don't want to insult people, but in trucks there's 6 guys that can win a race, and
right.
Xfinity there's maybe 10,
right.
But in Cup
you mentioned that competition
20.
Level.
Yeah, I mean the competition is just a lot higher, and the cars there's a lot more people with better cars. There's just a lot more competitive teams, and the gap is just a lot smaller there. So just readjusting to that, I think, is a big thing. And not only that, but the guys that are in the Cup Series have been there a long time. You look at look at the guys in the Final Four at Homestead. They've all been racing in the Cup Series for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's longer than I've been in any full-size car. So it's just an adjustment. You just have to up your game to their level.
So how do you learn going forward with everything that you digest from this season, whether it's the mistakes or things you could have done better or, things that went wrong? When you put all that together and you talk about, wanting to be better and learning from those for the future, how do you do that? Is it studying tape? Is it, you mentioned your driver report? How do you, as a young driver, besides, picking Kyle or, Denny's brains, things like that, are there certain ways that you like to better yourself? Is it through research or data? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, that's another resource we have in the Cup Series is data, and looking at that has been pretty helpful for me throughout the year. How do you actually do it? I think it's a lot of on-track time. I mean, honestly,
right.
there's not anything better that I've experienced than just getting out there and doing it and, not making the same mistake twice. And that's tough to say, or it's easy to say, tough to do, but I think just getting out there and doing it live and in color is the best way to do it. The more time usually that I have to digest something, I'm more of a hands-on kind of learner. I think I have to really do it and feel it and touch it to learn and figure out how it works. So it's tough for me sometimes to just look at, pictures or pieces of paper and say, okay, well, that's how you do it. There's a lot of people like that, but it's not really me. So just getting out there and really doing it. Utilizing the resources as much as I can. I obviously have a lot here at Joe Gibbs Racing with Denny and Kyle, both veterans in the Cup Series, but I think really just getting out there and doing it is big.
So nothing beats seat time, as everybody always talks about.
Yeah, it's unfortunate in a way. I mean, obviously you wish there was a way that we could learn away from it, and it's also unfortunate, it's not like another sport, football, baseball, golf, even motocross. Those guys can get out and ride every day if they want to. So we can't do that, unfortunately. We can't go hit 1,000 golf balls a day and learn how to be perfect at it. We have to get out there and utilize the small amount of time of practice we have, and then obviously the race. So it just makes it pretty challenging. One
of the things that I got a good chuckle at in listening to your interview with Nate Ryan for his podcast is you had mentioned something about you were looking back at stuff from maybe not this past season, but seasons of just other stuff that you've run, and you were kind of struck at some things about you felt like you came off like a brat. And I was just curious how much do you look back at stuff and try and be aware of how you come off, whether it's making sure that you don't want to, as you said, you don't want to whine about it, you just handle it and move on. Do you try to be aware of how you come off, or was that just something that came up because maybe you were watching a particular thing?
No, anymore I don't think about it too much, just because I don't think I struggle with that anymore. But I think then when I was just first getting into NASCAR and the Truck Series and Xfinity, I guess, I don't know, I was grateful and thankful for the opportunity, but I don't think I respected it the way I should have, just because it all comes so quick and so easy, and we were winning races right off the bat, that it's there was so many times I felt like, well, I should have won that race. Why didn't I? And it's somebody else's fault that I didn't win it. And obviously people don't really appreciate that. They want somebody to get on there and be a grown-up and say how it happened, say what happened. There's no they don't want to hear somebody get on TV and whine about what happened and complain why it didn't work out. They want to hear what happened, why it happened, and what you're going to do different next time. So I think that's just the way I look at it now. I think that's just a fact of experience and getting a little bit older. I mean, that was 4 years ago now. So it's just a lot different. Like I said, I don't think about it too much anymore. But it was something then that I was working on and trying to get better at.
Yeah. Erik, when we talked, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, I had asked you if you felt like you were adjusting to the continued spotlight of going from being a short track guy who suddenly has Kyle Busch singing your praises to winning in the truck and then winning in Xfinity, and you said it was a little bit of adjustment. I'm curious now that you've made it to Cup and the spotlight keeps growing, and now you're going to be in-house at Joe Gibbs Racing. Is there still stuff to adjust to with that?
Yeah, at times. I mean, you just have to be, cognizant of what you're doing away from the racetrack, I guess, more than anything. You're out and you don't realize it at times, but maybe you're out with your buddies and you realize somebody's staring at you and, they know who you are and you don't think it matters at the time, but it does matter. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And being 21 years old, you want to go out and have a good time with your buddies that are the same age as you, because they can do that. But it's just a different position for myself. Fortunate in a way, obviously, I get to do a really cool thing for a living, but you do lose some freedom with that. You can't necessarily do whatever you want all the time. So it is an adjustment some. Even going back to, obviously, I think it's more prevalent down here, people really knowing who you are, because so many people are intertwined in the racing industry. When I go back to Michigan, it's not as present, maybe more around where I grew up, just because I know the people. But, it's just different. I think just adjusting to that and getting to learning more about it and just being smarter about it.
Have you had many of those moments where you're out somewhere and people recognize you and maybe you get approached about stuff? Is that a cool moment, or is it like, oh?
Yeah, I've had it. There's some times where it's cool, but there's other times where it's like you just want to be one of the guys hanging out with your buddy, and you don't really want to have somebody just randomly, trying to hang out with you. Yeah. So there's times where it's cool, it's fine, and it's no big deal. But there's other times where it's kind of, it's almost embarrassing in a way. Because you're out and you're hanging out, and you're just being a normal person with your friends, and somebody comes up and they're blowing you up about racing and yada yada yada, and it's like, okay, whatever. And then you walk back to your buddies and they're all laughing at you. But there's a time and place where it's okay, but sometimes it can be a little bit overbearing.
So 2 more things for you. Looking ahead to 2018, you're in-house, you are in the 20 car. Do you go into next season the same, like with the same mentality, the same attitude, or do you take a breath and say, well, I got to prove myself to Coach Gibbs all over again?
Well, I think you're always trying to prove yourself. At least I am. I think the thing at the Cup Series that's different, at least what I've realized, is that everyone's talented in the Cup Series. You look at all the drivers, and they're all talented. Everybody knows that. And, I don't think anybody would say to another driver or about another driver that they aren't. We all, to get there at some point, we're very successful in some form of racing. You look back on everyone's career, and at some point they were very good in some form of racing, and most are still very good in Cup. So I think it's just a different kind of, it's just proving yourself at that level. It's not proving yourself that you're a good driver. People know that. It's proving that you can be a good driver among the best in the world. You look at how many guys really get to race cars for a living. It's 40 in NASCAR in the Cup Series. It's 15 in Formula One. It's maybe 200 in the whole world that get to drive race cars for a living. So just proving that you're the best among that group, I think, is just a difference in the Cup Series for me. So I think you're in your way. You're always trying to prove yourself, but you also, you can't think about it too much. I think at times I've thought about it too much, not just in Cup, but over the course of my career. And when I really just lay back and do the things that I did that got me to that point, whether it be in late models or trucks or Xfinity, and just lay back and just drive and be normal, I think it works out better. So that's what I always try to do. There's times where I get, worked up, but I think if you just sit back and let it all happen, it works out better.
It's only December, but I'm sure you're already thinking about next year and what you want to accomplish. What's on your early list of things that you want to check off the list for next year in the 20 team?
Well, I think next year for us, just making the playoffs is a big one. We really wanted to make the playoffs with the 77 team, so I would be pretty down on the year if we didn't make the playoffs, honestly. That's a big one for us. Winning a race would be great. I think you've seen, like I said earlier, you've seen how tough it is. But I really think, I think we're capable of it. Obviously, we saw, Kyle's year last year. We saw Denny win races, and Martin obviously win a lot of races. So, the cars are capable, the team's capable. Just a matter of going out and doing it. So I think those are the 2 things that are big for us. As far as if we make the playoffs and getting there, I think we'd be happy just to be competitive. It'd be great to advance a round or 2, but just making it would be the first goal for us.
Well, I appreciate the time, Erik. I'm sure they're going to keep you plenty busy between now and then. And if I don't see you before then, have a happy holiday, and we'll see you in Daytona.
Great. Thanks.